going to do for my part is describe to you what the vision is and what the need is. I love this picture because it really exemplifies the kind of attitude that children have in coming to this library. They just cannot wait to get there. A little bit of history. The market house was built in 1800, and then in about 1845 the Independent Order of Oddfellows built the second story for a secret meeting house. It's been a butcher shop, a school, was a town hall with jail cells in the back of it. And we actually have a board member who had been incarcerated as a youth. It was a temporary hospital during the Civil War, as many of the buildings were in town. In 1922, the Shepherdstown Women's Club started a volunteer library. In 1972, the Women's Club turned it over to the state so they could receive state funding. In the early 1990s, the library is starting to feel the pressure of increased population and library use, and the board began a search for alternative space solutions. And that search has brought us to where we are today with the Library Project. We have so many activities that are centered on the library and come out of the library, but we just don't have space and the capability to respond to everything we should be. Our mission statement reads that the Shepherdstown Public Library is committed to providing a variety of information sources, educational and cultural programs and services to fulfill and inspire a civically and culturally engaged community. It's become way more difficult for the library to serve its role in its current location, and the community's needs have really outgrown. We have no ADA access to the upstairs or to the tiny restroom. Our narrow aisles are not navigable by wheelchair. Our children's department is our busiest program, and our programs are so successful that we've had to move off-site to accommodate our ever-growing audience. We go to the train station for programs, we go to the men's club for programs, and we go to the neighbor's yard when the goats come. They can attract up to 200 kids and adults. Our summer program signed up 500 readers last summer. We currently have about 18,000 items for checkout in the library. And at the basic level of service, 2 items per capita, at this point we should have 43,492 items. At the exemplary level of service, at 4 times per capita, we should have around 87,000 items for use by the population that we are paid to serve, which is a third of the county. Technology is changing, as we know, at a fast and furious rate, and a new space would be flexible and would accommodate new technology as it arrives, including Kindles and whatever's coming in, ideally wireless everything, not to mention our famous parking situation. Some numbers about space. Our current size is 2,000 square feet. West Virginia Library working standards require 0.6 of a square foot per person served. And since we are mandated to serve a third of the county, our current requirement should be around 10,500 square feet. Since 2000 to 2009, we've experienced 2.78% annual increase yearly. And so by 2020, if we extrapolate out, the need will be closer to 15,000 square feet. Our circulation has risen by 131% since 2001, and our visits by 128%. Our children's programs have increased by 268%. Our children's program attendance has increased by 94%, and our interlibrary loan has increased by 3,722%. That's literally off the graph. And that's because we are now part of a 9-library consortium that's among 3 counties, and we have the ability now to borrow from any of those libraries. This explosive growth has intensified our search for more space, and over the last 20 years, our library board has looked at many alternative solutions. We've looked into moving into other spaces like the men's club, the War Memorial Building, the post office, the old fire hall, and even McMurrin Hall. And now we're considering an entirely new space to augment the old. The library is ready for another metamorphosis, and we are way overdue. And that brings us to our new concept, which is Library of the Future, a brownfield made green. So where is this space and what is a brownfield? Right here, the Royal Blue Diamond is a 4.5-acre site that the town purchased in 1954 for the purpose of creating a municipal dump. It closed in 1969. It's been dormant since then. Why this site? Well, it's easy to access. It allows complete ADA compliance. It can meet current and future demand for program. We need the flexibility to respond to changes because they're changing all the time. Reclamation of unused land and green construction of a green library. Cost, the land is donated by the town and will be largely remediated by grants, and room to grow with the community and the community's needs. It's close enough to downtown to walk, and it will link eventually to green spaces and parks through walking trails. There's a movement to create walking trails among the 5 parks in and around Shepherdstown. Easily accessible from the elementary and middle schools and from Shepherd University. I'd like to share with you just one potential vision. This is Garrett Graham from West Virginia University. For his senior project, he created a sort of a whole concept about mostly what the outside would look. We presented Garrett with our wish list, and he laid out a logical scenario, including all the areas we had mentioned. Okay, so here's just some images. An entry to the site, and here's the possible entrance view. We're thinking of an outdoor amphitheater, which would be a place for story hours and library activities. And it would be a wonderful place for a junior theater. Tiered planning that with so much emphasis on locally grown foods. It would be a perfect outdoor classroom for children and adults. Walkways and trails, he sort of linked them all around. Children's play area. And then just to remind you, we do intend to retain an in-town presence. And now to get into a little bit of numbers. These are our primary sources. Our state funding is a per capita amount, currently at $4.50 per capita. Then we are eligible when there is money to apply for LSTA grants. Our local tax-based funding comes from three groups: the County Commission, Board of Education, and the Corporation of Shepherdstown. And then local non-tax-based comes from fundraising, donations, and grants. And a lot of the fundraising, in fact, the Board of Education provided us with a $15,000 a year levy that was passed a few years ago. And the County Commission contributes approximately $60,000 a year, although it really does. In 2007 and 2008, we did a countywide survey about libraries and library service, and that indicated that 73% of residents would be willing, somewhat or very willing, to pay a small $10 or $20 extra tax yearly for public library service. The will is out there. There's a positive attitude towards libraries and what they do contribute to communities. We have fundings from the Northern West Virginia Brownfield Assistance Center Focus Program to put on this conference. We have $50,000 a year for 5 years from a foundation specifically for the development of this project. We have a building fund that we have been accumulating because we've been looking at this for so long, that we have accumulated from community donations, community partnership grants, and matching donations and memorials. And further grants will be solicited for cleanup, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, and green library construction by grants. This is one estimate that was in a planning scenario of what the new library might cost, and it was shooting for the moon. This is everything that we possibly could want, including all the development of the site around it. This is a very educated projection. These projections are based on current budget expenses and an average cost per square foot for a large 10 to 20,000 square foot library. So the next steps, first we are going to secure the title to the land. That's number one. We need a detailed project development plan, and we want to engage community participation and support, and that's what we're starting with today. Conduct a feasibility study, and then start the application for cleanup funding. And it's a big vision that engenders a big challenge. And I think if this community decides to get itself behind this, that it will happen. And dare to dream big. Kiss the frog. Okay, thank you. And we will be having question and answer session later.
Just exactly how much work are we going to have to do to clean up this brownfield? Do we have any idea yet?
There's no major problem here. I mean, y'all are heavy hitters, but we're not dealing with a heavy industrial site.
Part of the reason for having this conference today is to help the community start the process of understanding the brownfield. We don't want to waste the money, but as the experts are telling us, we may not have to spend the money. So this is our start.
Basically, the funding for this aspect is separate from the funding for a library itself.
Right.
So, whatever happens in this area is not going to take away from whatever happens in the library arena and the funding situation.
when you look for funding, it always helps if you have other funding somewhere else. So it doesn't matter what that other funding is for. Hallie's right that the cleanup money would be specifically separate, and it wouldn't ever be applicable to any other aspect of constructing the library. Having that money in queue and having it being awarded, it sort of adds more validity to the project. The project is going to happen, and so then other funders that are looking at it would then say, look, this is how much money has been invested in this project, and it looks like the community's still behind it, and it still looks like a viable project. Now we can invest more money into doing the actual completion.
Is this stuff composted all the way down to the point where it's like soil, most of it, except for the tires? What's it look like at down there 13 feet down? Is it still plastic
in
bags?
a certain
or?
situation, from what we saw, and we had that in place when we did the investigation, from what we saw, it's primarily metal. I mean, it's just metal that hasn't decayed, and there's really, it's primarily inert. So